All right. Thank you so much for joining this breakout room to hear about Farm Radio International. Rosamond, you have already introduced yourself, but please introduce yourself again, and then we can start the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Rosamond Dohine. I'm the Programs Manager, Farm Radio International, the Ghana office. We work, Farm Radio is actually a Canadian non-for-profit organization working basically in sub-Saharan Africa. And we have partnership with a lot of radio stations, over 1,000 radio stations across Africa. Okay, so can I start with the presentation now, or do we wait a bit?
No, I think that would be wonderful if you want to start, and then remember we said about 5-10 minutes for presentation, so we have a good 10 minutes for all. I'm sure the participants will have questions for you too, so we'll leave time for that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I already introduced my organization, Farm Radio International. So pre-COVID, we actually did most of about 80% of our work from a distance. Basically what we do is to partner with radio stations, coach them, give them training, and also to help them in giving information to farming families and smallholder farmers across sub-Saharan Africa. The technologies that we use, our main technology is radio, but we try to make radio very interactive by having radio as a two-way approach instead of like just giving information and not getting anything back. So we use other mobile technologies and IVR systems to ensure that most of our interventions are able to move to scale, and we are also able to collect data and also reach a large number of rural communities, including urban communities as well. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Thank you very much. So since
we can't hear you, Rosamond. I think, did we lose her? Oh no.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, there.
I'm back.
I can hear you now. Okay. Which slide did you want? Because we did see the one that said since the pandemic.
Second slide. Yeah,
there.
Yeah, the second slide.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, so since the pandemic, we've done most of our work remotely. So currently what we are doing is using training our radio broadcasters from a remote distance, where we are using like internet. We're doing most of our trainings over phone, and we are adapting our Uliza system. Uliza is actually a Swahili word that simply means ask. And so we are using our Uliza system to collect data from the field. We are using our Uliza system to reach out to our beneficiaries to make sure that whatever information that we have for them is actually pushed to them in the local language. So adaptation of methods to be remote led. So what we do is audience research. So we try to know how many people are listening to a radio program, how many people are a radio station able to reach, what is the audience saying. We train our broadcasters. We have our design workshops remotely, where we come up with weekly topics on what we want to talk about based on the goal or objective of the project. We also are able to do household surveys and key informant interviews and individual surveys using mobile technology. our newest set of challenges is actually gender equality. In Africa, we are still learning how to incorporate gender equality into our programming and into our daily lives. So that's one area that it's a bit challenging in trying to reach more women, especially based on the technologies that we use. Using radio, using the mobile phone, using our own Uliza system. Realize that in the rural settings, you have most of them not very tech savvy. So it poses a bit of a challenge, more especially for women. But with constant education and using the radio, we are currently reaching there. Next slide, please. Okay, so like I already mentioned, Uliza is actually a Swahili word that simply means ask. So Uliza was first developed as a tool for audience polling. So what we do is on weekly basis on our radio, we expect that the audience will just leave a missed call, and then the system calls them back and they're able to follow a set of menu and they answer the questions. It helps us to know what how they understood the weekly episode and what they want to hear in the next episode. So it has since evolved into a suite of services that combine radio, mobile phones, and often interactive voice response systems. So they're able to call like a number which is free, and they're able to listen to weather information, price information, they're able to leave their feedback, which actually helps them to know, for instance, like if a farmer is going to their field to go and apply weedicides, the weather information actually helps them to know whether they will be able to do that or not. And it also comes in the local language. So for instance, in Ghana, we have over 46 different local languages. So every program that we have, depending on the target audience, we try to make sure that the program is in the local language of the beneficiary. So it helps us to exchange communication with our with the rural communities, and we're able to get information from them, whereas we give them information, and that helps us to incorporate all these into our radio programs. Next slide. Next slide, please. So it's important to give remote-led methods special attention, even when face-to-face is possible. And we've actually come to realize this more. Even though we used to meet
Rosemont, we lost you. We lost you for a little bit there.
Yeah.
It's probably the internet connection.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know why my So it's important to give remote-led methods special attention, even when more, especially within this pandemic. So even we used to have a lot of remote-led
Maybe Rosemont, turn off your camera. Sometimes that helps to get the internet connection a little faster. Can you hear me now? We can't hear you, Rosemont.
Sorry. Sorry, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you now. If you want to, you can turn off.
Please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Maybe you turn off your camera. Sometimes that helps. with the internet connection. And I
Yeah.
want to remind you that we only have 9 minutes left now. So
Oh, okay.
yes, so if you want to maybe wrap up, and then we can have some
Okay.
questions as well. But I know you have a little bit to talk
Oh,
about a case study if you want to do that quickly, and then we can go to questions. Thank you.
okay. So, okay, so we can go to the next slide, where I just want to elaborate on the Burkina experience. So the next one, the next slide, please. Okay, so in Burkina, they usually would do more of face-to-face, but for this current situation that we find ourselves, most of their meetings were done with management of radio stations and stakeholders of various projects online. And then most of the trainings for radio broadcasters were also done at a distance. Next slide, please. And then for the challenges faced during COVID, we also realized that holding remote interviews were a bit difficult, especially for like what we are currently experiencing now with the internet challenges. And also with radio, we needed to add vox pops. So what we tried to do is to rather pick the vox pops from the Uliza. And then what we also did was to create, like, have a Uliza ambassador within the communities where they would advocate and ask people to access the Uliza. We've also used the Uliza to do our evaluations for most of our projects that were ended. Okay, next slide. I think that should be the last. Yeah. So basically, this is what we've been able to do using remote LED. I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much. And the floor is open for any questions from the group.
Hi, this is Kim. I have a question about how you're managing all of the different local languages. You know, you mentioned that you try and make sure that you're addressing things in the local languages for communities. And, you know, for the radio side of things, that's probably, I don't want to say easy, but, you know, manageable. But how are you managing sort of the digital side of things, like the voice response systems, in all that wide variety of languages?
Okay, so what we do as an organization is to hire individuals that speak specific languages based on like our project and focus area. So they listen to weekly episodes of radio programs and also transcribe all the voices that we have on the Uliza. And this is giving back to the radio station as a way of feedback for them to incorporate into their radio program. So depending on the language, depending on the focus area, we have a dedicated person that listens to that particular language and is able to transcribe, is able to talk to the radio station for them to have like full knowledge of what is happening using the Uliza system.
There's a question in the chat box from Siba Brata. Can you highlight on the topics of the broadcast? So, okay. Yeah, health or agriculture, how do you, yeah.
Okay, so usually we do more agriculture, health, and nutrition. We just recently veered into governance, construction, but even with the construction, it was gender. And so what we do is every project comes with a different focus, and we meet with all the stakeholders, we bring the radio stations on board, and then we come up with weekly topics that we would want to discuss depending on what we are trying to reach. For instance, we've worked with World Food Program, and they were focused on post-harvest and reduction in post-harvest losses. So on weekly, and this was with maize. So we meet with WFP, farmers, marketers, like people within the maize value chain. And then we sit around the table and then we look at, okay, under harvesting, what are the thematic areas that we need to look at, what are the key messages that we need to inform the audience about, what are the take home messages that we need. So every program, for instance, comes with an agricultural tip, and then it also, after discussing the for instance, they can say, today we want to talk about harvesting, and harvesting we are focusing on probably getting your maize cobs off the field, and then we bring in a resource person who is an expert in that area and then discusses the issue. Phone lines are open, and then the listeners calling, and then we leave two questions, one open-ended question and one closed-ended question on the Uliza platform. And then farmers calling, they just have to flash because the number is real, and they're calling and then leave their answers. So based on the answers that they leave, that informs us whether they actually understood the topic that was discussed. And if they didn't, then we have to repeat that particular topic for them to understand it very well. So we do health, we do agric, we do nutrition, and all that. So depending on, and sometimes some of the projects are our own projects, sometimes some of the projects are projects from other organizations, and they have like a communication aspect of it, and they're trying to reach a mass number of people. Then we come in to help them.
Yes, so there's a question from Martin here about how do they know when to listen in? And what about accessibility of radio ownership, and density of radio ownership?
Okay, so before we come up with any radio program, we do what we call the formative research. And then, so we go down to the people, and then we ask them what, like, we want to know about, especially the topic that we want to discuss. We want to, first of all, know their knowledge about these topics. So basically, we ask about their attitudes, we ask about their practices, and then we also seek information on their knowledge. And then we also try to find out about their radio listening habits. So do they have radio? Do they have access to radio? Do they have control over radio? And when or what time or what day would they like to listen to a radio program? And what radio station would they like to listen to? And once we get that information, that's when we move into work with a radio station. So usually radio stations that we work with are radio stations that have been selected by the beneficiaries. And then we negotiate a time that is okay with the beneficiaries with the radio station. And then once we are about starting the radio program, we go back to the communities or the districts with the radio people, let them know the time, the day, and also we use the radio station to do announcements, promos, for them to know that the program is on this day. What we also do is we have one live program and one repeat program. This helps for those who are not able to listen to the live program to be able to listen to the repeat program before the next program is aired. And the live and repeat programs are held on separate days, and that helps them to at least, so even if you miss an episode, you can always listen to another before the next episode is aired. In terms of control over radio or access to radio, what we've also been able to do is we try to, there are some communities that have what we call the community information system. So we try to link up with these community information systems, and when it's time for the radio broadcast, they actually open their information service or system, and then pick the feed from the radio station and broadcast it to the entire community. Another means by which we have tried is also to put them into listening groups. And when we are able to, when we put them into listening groups, we provide them with portable radio sets that has, it's actually multifunctional. So it's able to record a radio program. So they can record the radio program and listen to it at any time. It is manually powered, solar powered, and it also uses electricity. So because in most cases, we realize that women may have access to radio, but they may not have control over radio, over the radio set. Wherever it is tuned to, that is where they listen. So usually, because we realize that men have mobile phones, they can listen to radio on their mobile phones and like other devices. When we do these listening groups, we are more focused on the women by providing the women with these portable radio sets that will help them to listen to the program at their own given time. For instance, if a radio program is being held at the time that women are cooking, they are able to record the radio program and listen to it at a later date or a later time when they are both free and they meet. And the radio set is such that it helps them to also record their discussions. And once they record their discussions, the radio presenters visit them in the field to get their feedback, and they're able to pick this because it has a memory card. So they're able to pick it from the memory card and then use it as part of their radio programming. So that is
excellent. Thank you so much, Rosemont. Thank you for also addressing a little bit of the gender equality issues there. We will be going back into the main room now. So thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who joined this room.